It's December 5th, 2016, and we're at WJXT doing another oral history interview, and we are very pleased to have Willie J. Martin. Willie, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And this is an interview that's going to focus on the radio part of broadcasting.
Well, we'll do what we can to help you with it.
And according to my notes, you started in radio at the very early age of 15.
A month before my 15th birthday, that's correct.
Doing?
Well, I had a morning shift from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. In Mobile, Alabama, on a station called WMOZ. It was an AM station at 960.
Wow. So you were a disc jockey at the age of 15.
Yes.
And then after you...
They gave me a name, Willie the Wake Up Man.
And after your morning shift on WMOZ, you went to school.
Went right on to school, yes.
Very cool.
Had to get the classes in.
Yeah. And what kind of format was WMOZ? What kind of music did you play?
Well, that was just a straight up what you would probably classify now as an R&B station. Mm-hmm. But it was obligated to serve the total community, which meant that we did a lot of R&B, blues, jazz, gospel, it was very segmented. Mm-hmm. You know, I did a show 5 to 8 in the morning that was really R&B. Then at 9 o'clock in the morning, there was a lady who came on and did something called club and social notes, and she sang, played piano, that kind of thing. I guess it was television without the picture.
And I guess at that point, FM was not a big deal.
No, FM was you could barely give FM stations away at that time.
Right.
Little did we know that FM was going to become the beast.
Well, how did you get interested in radio in the first place? How did what did you grow up listening to a lot of radio? And
well, I grew up during the war era. We were in the middle of World War II when I grew up. I was I remember about 4 years old. I would hear the newscast coming in, and they had the floor model type radios, all mm-hmm. battery powered, and there were those voices that would come on the radio and just absolutely shake the cabinet. So a little boy 4 years old running around the living room just hearing something coming out but seeing no one, I was bound to be intrigued. But the thing that captured me more than anything was the NBC tone. And I said to myself as a little boy, I said, you know, that's the job I'd like to have. If that's all I got to do is play that little thing
right.
and make big money, that's what I wanted.
And from that radio gig, you went on to college.
Yes. I continued to work on radio and in radio through college.
Oh, really? And you went to college at Alabama State College?
Alabama State College.
Where is that?
The Alabama State College is in Montgomery, Alabama, but there was a branch of Alabama State College in Mobile, Alabama. Mm-hmm. I was able to keep my job, go to school, that kind of thing.
And you majored in what?
Actually, it was English and history. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do a couple of other things, but the curriculum was limited, so I did English and history. I really had a desire to go into political science, but you know that wasn't offered.
So even at that point, you weren't thinking that radio would be your career?
No. I had no intent on spending 60 years in the broadcast business. Mm-hmm. No, indeed not. It was just something that I had wanted to do as a child, and I was able to get into it at a very early age, but I had no plans of making it a career.
So how and when did that plan evolve?
Well, the plan shifted when I got married at an early age and a couple of kids came along.
Okay.
and I needed a shortcut to begin to bring in some dollars, but still I had an idea of going on doing other things, but each time I looked at going into something else, radio just kept bringing me back. I stayed in the media business all this time.
And you were enjoying it, I guess.
Yes, I did. It afforded me a good living, and I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I met a lot of creative people in the broadcast business, and I learned a lot of I was able to capitalize on a lot of ideas. And as I said earlier, when I first became interested in radio, there were the great announcers with the great voices, and there were a lot of programs on radio, a lot of mysteries, you know, Orson Welles and all those great guys.
A lot of drama.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was extremely fascinating.
Yeah.
And listening to all of those, you know, I don't know, I guess I just banked all those ideas in the back of my mind. And as we moved forward with a career in broadcasting and having to produce commercials and do a lot of other things, a lot of that would just come back to mind, and we'd put a different spin on it, and we were able to use a lot of things.
But there was no College of Broadcasting at Alabama State College?
No, there was no College of Broadcasting. The thing that I thought that helped me a great deal with my broadcasting, and I would say this to other people who talked to me back in those days about how to prepare for a broadcast career. I suggested, naturally, English. I suggested the humanities, and also a lot of research. Because while the stations that I worked for were music intense, we really wanted to be prepared and well-rounded. So I suggested to many of those who were coming into the broadcast, who wanted to come into broadcasting, to take a look at humanities.
Still good advice today.
I would think so.
Yeah. Well, moving forward, you came to Jacksonville in 1961.
Yes.
WOBS.
Yes, WOBS was a daytime radio station. It was owned by Mel Lynn, Inc., a gentleman by the name of Larry Pickus, who also was a great disc jockey, but a fantastic entrepreneur. He had acquired the station from a real broadcast legend, Robert Ronceville, and so we hooked onto that, hooked our star to that boxcar, so to speak.
And that was the point where you began to get involved in ownership.
Well, you know, my interest in ownership grew at that particular time. I began to read a lot about the Federal Communications Commission, began to follow transfers, purchases, and that kind of thing, looking at how media properties were bought and sold. But still, you know, opportunities were limited in those days, but I knew the opportunity would come at some point in time. So got prepared for whatever the day. And you left WOBS, as is frequently the case in radio careers, to go other places. You went to Montgomery? No, I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was, I went to Fort Lauderdale in, I can't remember the exact year, but I think it was 63, I believe, somewhere in there, 63, 64. So I went down to Fort Lauderdale. They were changing formats. They wanted to institute an R&B format. They wanted to do something quite different because really competition was killing them with the format and what they were trying to do. So they switched, and the rest is history in that regard. Yeah, they were highly successful with the changeover, and I was happy to be a part of it. I may have been maybe the second or third hire for that transition.
And then you came back to Jacksonville for a while?
Yes, I returned to Jacksonville in 1968. I was in Fort Lauderdale for 3 or 4 years and returned to Jacksonville in 1968. And that was when I got into ownership. I went back, came back to WOBS and became one of the owners in WOBS. Great time, yeah, wonderful time. That was a time when a lot of things were shifting in the broadcast business. I think that 1968 is when I would say that when it came to R&B formats or urban formats, African American focused stations, I would say that that would have been the time when the style of radio caught up with what I had been preparing for.
And radio stations began to specialize and target certain audiences?
Well, that's true. But, and there were those stations prior to 1968 specializing in reaching out to urban audiences. For an example, in Jacksonville, your number one or your top station back then would have been WJXT-TV, which was the premier beautiful music station, followed by WAPE, which was your big rock. Then you had your country and western station, WIVY and Marshall Rowland, and then WOBS. So, and our station usually ranked somewhere around number 3 in the marketplace. I didn't really have a desire to be the number 1 station in the market because at that point, well, you know, you're a target at that time. So I said, okay, if we're number 3 and the advertisers buy 5 deep in the market, then we're okay. We were considered the number 1 urban station in the market, and of course, that wasn't the title. That wasn't what they called the format at that time, but it evolved in what became known as urban contemporary. And we had a great sound, great station. WOBS was a good, solid radio station. We had a desire to be on the air 24 hours, so we sold WOBS and purchased WPDQ, which was a 24-hour station. That was when, and we did a lot of great things with WPDQ. It was the community radio station. If you wanted to know anything about the urban market, you really tuned in to WPDQ. And
did PDQ have some news and public affairs programming? Yeah.
Yes. We formatted we placed rather included in the format news, public affairs. The format evolved to the point to where we really didn't have a lot of long form programs when it came to urban affairs, but we managed to do vignettes, which played very well into our music format. We were doing 5-minute top of the hour newscasts, which we learned how to shorten those newscasts, and we learned how to do those full newscasts in 90 seconds. So it was our strategy to try to be as music intense as possible, yet be successful for the advertisers and entertain the community. So that was what we tried to do. That was the strategy.
And you did get into FM.
Yes, there was a license that was assigned to Green Cove Springs at 92.7, and we purchased 92.7, and it later became known as 92.7 The Beat. So at that time we had an AM and FM combination, which we enjoyed very much.
And by then, people had caught on to FM and had bought radios capable of receiving it and
Yes,
so forth.
FM was coming into its own.
Yeah.
There were a number of stations that were replacing these great AM stations around the country. WBLS in New York replaced WWRL, which had been the big station, but when WBLS FM came on, naturally it just sort of wiped out. It replaced WWRL. Even though they were both great stations, but FM just had a better sound.
Yeah, I recall interviewing Ed Oberle, known on the radio as Ed Bell, and he, I think, was the first to bring FM to Jacksonville, and it was a struggle because it was a great sound, but nobody was capable of receiving it.
Well, yes, I remember Ed Bell, Ed Oberle. As a matter of fact, that was the station that I mentioned, WKTZ. That was his station. Of course, many FM owners struggled with their properties. Initially.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you had this FM bubble that just came on and it came into its own. And the prices naturally on FM stations began to skyrocket.
Well, there also came a point in your career where you kind of went into acquiring radio stations and helping with various consulting requirements.
Yes, well, with the advent of FM, a number of stations, fell on difficult times. So it made it, my services became very attractive because we were able to go in and teach or instruct as to how to survive, how AM could survive in an FM world, which was difficult.
Well, and just briefly, how did you do that?
Well, what we did was we would go into a market and we would take away everything that was AM. In other words, what we did was we suggested that we recommended FM style programming on AM, and the idea was to have much more music, a lot less talk, and the AM ownership, the AM people didn't think that they could do that. And we taught them how to do it and how effective that it could be. We also suggested that they would double up on or increase the amount of public affairs and information that they provided because FM stations weren't trying to do that. Many of the AM stations were purchased just as FM was beginning to dominate. And what happened, AM stations were being sold at higher prices, and then they had to compete with FM stations while trying to satisfy large operating costs. So my company became what was known as a survival type of company, and we began to specialize in various startups and turnarounds, and that was a place for what we were doing.
So you were successful with that?
Very much so, very much successful. We probably would have grown at a much larger pace, but we had to decide whether or not we were going to allow the intelligence of what we were doing to become widespread in the marketplace. And had we done that, we would have grown an animal that would have killed my company. So we stayed very low-key and under the radar with our strategies. And that's why we were successful. We had opportunities to work with other companies that were consulting FM stations. There was a strong company called Burkhardt Abrams, and Burkhardt Abrams was the main brain for programming successful FM stations. We went into markets where they were, and we were successful against them, and it was a little mysterious as to what we were doing, but we kind of kept everything sort of, as I said, off the radar. What we were trying really to do was just give our clients an opportunity to survive and at some point be able to sell their properties off.
Mm-hmm. And then there came an Orlando chapter in your life, your career.
Yeah. Well, Orlando had a radio station that, where, let's see, I think it was WOKB. It had been a station for specializing in urban radio for a very long time, and it was the only station in the market. Then Woody Sudbrink, I know these names mean very little to you, but Woody Sudbrink had another station which was WORL, and they wanted to switch their station to the urban format, and they needed some help in doing so because they were going up against a station that had been in the market for quite some time. And that was when we went to Orlando to assist Mr. Sudbrink with his transition. As I said earlier, we did a lot of startups and turnarounds, and made a good living at doing that.
Mm-hmm. And but you basically kept your Jacksonville connection going.
I stayed, never moved from Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. We saw opportunity in the Orlando market, went in, and Metroplex Communications came into Orlando, bought a powerful FM station, which was called Joy 108, and at the same time they bought WORL, and they had good solid AM/FM combination, which was great for what we were doing with ORL, the FM. And then later on, they wanted to spin off WORL, and my group purchased WORL. We were successful with it, and we spun it off, I think, within 18 months to 2 years, something like that. Mm. We did very well with what we did with it. We shifted the call letters to a station in Altamont Springs, and it became a very successful talk station. Then we moved over to Gainesville to where there was a license available, and we as a matter of fact, we put the first urban broadcast station on the air in Gainesville. Mm-hmm. And I think that was somewhere around 1992. Mm-hmm. And we sold that one off after 2 or 3 years. So it was just a matter of moving around in the market.
So when you were a 15-year-old disc jockey, you would have no way to even dream of being in radio ownership and being a consultant and all the things that have happened subsequently.
No, I really didn't. That wasn't where my mindset was at all. But I knew that after I had been in it for a while, after 15, 16 years, and I wasn't, looking at doing anything else, I said, well, look, I better try to make a job of this as best we can. I almost got into television at one point. I think when I came back to Jacksonville in 1968, we had a Ford Foundation scholarship to study public broadcasting, and in lieu of taking that scholarship or fellowship, we went into ownership of WOBS at that time. That was the closest we came to doing, getting out of radio.
Well, you're still involved with consulting and so forth. You're not yet retired as we speak here in 2016. What's your perspective on radio, where it's going, what the future is, and so forth?
Well, I think that radio has a very, very bright future. Now, there would be people who would maybe argue the point, but what you're doing, what you're seeing today is a lot of mobility, and radio has always been portable. You could always carry it anywhere you wanted to go. You didn't have to stop and plug it in, anything like that. And actually, that's an asset, and that's something that can be carried forward, and that is what's being carried forward in even the new media. Today's generation does not like to be and will not be tethered. They don't like to have to stick around being plugged into something. They want it on the go, and that's basically what radio was able to do and has been able to do for a very, very long time. I think that the challenge, for want of a better word, is to get the old media people to understand that new media is an asset, and also getting the new media folk to understand that old media still works. So if you can, and I think that they're getting there. I think somebody is beginning to see what's going on with where there can be a good marriage with old and new media. And I think radio will be right there.
And when you have an opportunity, as you may from time to time, to counsel young people about careers, what kind of advice do you give them about careers in radio and television?
Well, versatility is extremely important. Look to do more things with your broadcast career than just being in front of the camera or behind the microphone. You have to be very, very versatile. One needs to be very well read. Reading is extremely important. Expanding knowledge, that's where you must be. And you also and we also have to consider the fact that all media is number one, transitory. Number two, your inventory when it comes to sales is self-liquidating. If you don't sell it now, it's not going to be there. And anyone who wants to get into broadcast business as an entrepreneur, I always say to them, this business eats money and picks its teeth with $1,000 bills. So you better know what you're doing when you step off in.
What's your primary criticism of what you see or hear these days?
Well, you know, it's difficult for me to offer very much criticism because a lot of things are accepted and permissible now that would not have been acceptable and permissible in my day. I never thought that I had a great radio voice, but certainly in my day you had to have some kind of voice if you wanted to be in the radio broadcasting business. But that's forgivable in this in this day and age. I think that you know there's not a lot of room to be critical because to offer criticism because who knows what an entrepreneur, a talent, a person involved in the media business now, who knows what they have to do in order to stay alive and survive and thrive in this business. So I'm not too critical of what's being done. The one thing that I'm asked when I go into a radio station or any media property, they ask me the question, how at your age will you be able to communicate with the younger group? There are a couple of things that I do. I try to find the best and the brightest among the employees and sit them down and do a one-on-one with those persons and get them and engage them and instruct them to those things that we feel that are that will bring about the greatest amount of success, and have them to communicate that to the rest of the body. So that's one of the strategies that we use. The second thing is we avoid doing history lessons by saying to the new group, I remember when, or this is how we did it back in the day. And we never have those kind of conversations unless they are forced on us by inquiring minds. The third thing is it is my obligation to allow less experienced persons to explore, to do those things that they would like to do with their own creativity. It's my obligation to sit there and let them do it, because after 60 years, I don't think that they can make any mistake that is beyond my ability to bring them out of problems.
Anything that I haven't asked you, anything that you would like to add?
Well, we had a lot of fun, as I said, in Jacksonville with radio. There were a number of great personalities, wonderful persons who owned stations, and we enjoyed working in the market. I think one of the things that I recall most, we had just sold WPDQ to Broadcast Enterprises National, and we had been enjoying great ratings. And just as we made the sale, we went from a 9.3 in the market all the way down to something like a 2.4 in one book. And just as we were making that transition, and staff came and they said, what are we going to do? I mean, he said, well, the bottom has dropped out. So I said, okay, we understand that Arbitron does a survey on Wednesdays. I think that's the beginning day, and we know that a lot of diaries are spread out around Arlington. I said, tell you what, let's go down to the Department of Transportation. That's when we had the tolls. I said, let's go down to the Department of Transportation and find out how much money between 7 and 9 in the morning they make, and we'll pay everybody's toll. So on the morning of the book, we went down. They made the price was $5,000. So we paid everybody's toll. We paid everyone's toll coming out of Arlington that morning, just as the Arbitron was breaking, and it cost us $5 grand. And there was another station in the market that had a $500,000 promotion budget that they used every year during survey time. So the coup that we pulled was that we spent $5 grand and regained our place in the market and overtook those who were spending a lot more money. So,
if Arbitron had known about that,
you know, who would have known?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
what they would have.
what they didn't know.
Who would have known what they? But you see, you had specialists who had worked for Arbitron, who you could hire as consultants, and they could tell you these kinds of things. But we didn't know it. We didn't have access to that. That information just leaked out to us, that the diaries were going to be distributed on that Wednesday morning. And so our strategy was, okay, if they're coming out, then let's do our biggest promotion at the time that they're breaking in. So,
And
oh yeah,
make some friends who were going to.
And that was one of the greatest coups, I think, that we.
That friendship would be reciprocated in their diary.
Yes, but of course we only got one shot. That was such a traffic jam, the Department of Transportation said, never again. Never again will we allow anyone to do that.
Right.
So, well, and of course I knew too that was going to happen. I said, man, we got to do this, get out of the way, and get going. So that was really super.
Well, Willie J. Martin, thank you very much for the oral history interview. Very interesting interview. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay.